We're reaching out to the beginners, the novices, the ones who say, I love chess so much, but I don't know what's going on. This is an exercise in endgames that I give to all beginners that come through. The function of it is to teach you how pawn structure operates as well as king activity is concerned. So this is a famous game. It's called the opera game. You can look it up online. Oh my God, we're on YouTube. Can you sing for us? Come. That's actually incredible. The opera singer during the opera game, incredible. So when chess first started, everyone was a materialist. They believed that the game was to win material, kind of like the Western economy. But then,
communists is what you're saying.
What's that?
They were not communists.
No. But we're looking for a new type of social epoch to emerge, right? One that fuses spirit. And Paul Morphy was the first chess philosopher, and he said, no, we need to use principles of harmony and activity in order to conquer the game, not just materialistic principles. Mm-hmm. So this is a famous game. It's called the opera game. You can look it up online. Paul Morphy went here. Right? His opponent chose to be a materialist and guard the pawn. Now, but notice, in his materialistic delusions, he blocks in his own bishop.
Yeah.
Now, when the bishop is blocked in, right, we now know that we're going to have a developmental advantage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, knowing that we're going to have a developmental advantage, we want to open the board, right? So, an open center is a position where there's no pawns in the middle. Right? A closed center would say, for example, be a center like this. Right? Does that make sense? So now, it's like this. Morphy chooses to open the center. But his opponent must have worked at Goldman Sachs. He only saw the materialistic composition of the game. So he pinned the horse because he was concerned about takes, and then knight takes pawn. Right?
Yeah.
So he takes here, and then he captures the defending piece. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Morphy recaptures here. Takes here. Now remember earlier we said there's 6 boards happening at once. Your side, my side, light square, dark square, king side, queen side. Mm-hmm. Being that we've now taken the light square bishop off the board, we start to see what's called a material imbalance, where there's a materialistic asymmetry on the board, where the knight and the bishop are not commensurate, right? So Morphy starts to look for light square weaknesses. So he could just develop his pieces, right? But he develops them with harmony to threaten checkmate. Now there's a 2-0 developmental advantage. This is a massive advantage. White is supposed to have like a 2-1 developmental advantage, and then black moves, then it's even, then white goes 3-2, and then black moves, then it's 3-3. A 2-0 developmental advantage means that with proper play, as long as there's nothing else going on on the board, white should be able to force a victory, long term, right? So he comes here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Blocks the checkmate, develops a piece. But now we shuffle the queen over to this side of the board, threatening mate in 2, with bishop takes king e7, queen e6. Does that make sense? Also threatening to trap the rook. His opponent plays this move because the only move that's going to save him, if we take here, is queen check here. Then the queens will have to trade off. And white will still be better, white will be up a pawn, but he feels like he's avoided catastrophe. Right? Morphy decided to take a different road than being materialistic about it, because he started to notice this bishop's blocked in. Does that make sense? So noticing this bishop's blocked in, he wanted to heighten his developmental advantage. So he comes here. His opponent, still concerned about the pawn and wanting to restrict the central square, plays this move. It's the queen. No. Oh my God, we're on YouTube. Can you sing for us? Come. Keep going. Keep going.
Il vostro nome.
Hug me. Hug me.
Voglio che siamo amici. My man, my family is over there. I want you to meet them.
I have to finish this lesson up. Just
How you doing?
Give me 5-10 minutes.
Ci darem la mano, mi dirai di sì. Don't let me scare you away. Morphy, Duke of Brunswick.
Introduce yourself to everybody. This is FIDE Master Nathan. What's your last name?
Resica,
and he's also a professional opera singer. So, welcome.
Partiam ben mio da qui. Shake my hand, buddy.
I'm in love with it.
Great to see you.
No, great.
You got a moment?
Yeah,
Say
no.
hi.
Just let me finish this last time. Give me like 5-10 minutes, and then I'll meet the panel. I'm gonna show him this game, and then we'll go. All right. So now, what do you think is wrong with White's position here? Is there anything wrong with it that can be improved?
Not really.
This bishop. So a good idea. I learned this from Yasser Sarwan. Talk to your pieces, right? How you doing, Mrs. Queen? Dude, I got up for my exercise already. No one could attack me. I'm doing great. How you doing, Mr. Bishop? Look at all my squares. How you doing, Horsey? I believe I can fly. How you doing, Mr. Bishop? I demand to speak to management immediately. Why is the bishop so mad?
You can't go anywhere.
He can't go anywhere. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now, not only does he develop himself, he also restricts or develop. Black's still playing like a materialist. Plays this move. Right? Just simply threatening the piece. But now remember, we have a developmental advantage, so we want the position open. Material imbalance on the light squares. Does that make sense? So now he's opened up the light squares to accentuate the power of the bishop. Does that make sense? Now, what are the last two pieces of White's position left without harmony?
These two,
Those two pieces. That's actually incredible. The opera singer during the opera game, incredible. Just realized what just happened. These two guys, right? Bringing it into harmony. Right? Now, what's the worst piece on the board? Right. Watch this. He's going to find a way to trade. Now, do you know what all the pieces are valued at?
yeah.
Okay. He's going to sacrifice, but he's going to find a way to trade this knight. Because see, this rook is not as good as this knight in this position, because this knight is what's keeping Black holding on. Does that make sense? So he's going to trade this rook for this knight. Watch. Make sense?
Yeah.
Now, the threat that's coming is either bishop takes or rook takes here, because this knight is useless due to the pin. Does that make sense? So his opponent moves here in order to free this up, right? So that now the knight can take. Mate in two. I'll give you a hint. The rook wants to go on that square.
Okay. I don't know.
Check. Oh no. Checkmate. Do you see the spirit of chess? Although we're down a queen and a knight, none of these pieces have moved. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. And remember on the third move of the game, when he decided to open the center, because he saw the developmental advantage, he then built the entire position around that strategy. And that's what gave him this checkmate.
Yeah.
Make sense? High five. Extraterrestrials are real, people. Welcome to this edition of Extraterrestrial Chess. Today, we're reaching out to the beginners, the novices, the ones who say, I love chess so much, but I don't know what's going on.
I don't know where to start.
Yeah. So he is the embodiment of all your hopes, desires, fears, ambitions, anxieties, and promises sitting right before you. This is the great Dylan Roth presiding as our resident beginner. So this is an exercise in endgames that I give to all beginners that come through. The function of it is to teach you how pawn structure operates as well as king activity is concerned. Go!
All right. Okay.
All he has to do is beat me. So if you run this through the engine, when you run this through the engine, it says that he has 10.1 and I have 5. So if Jesus Christ married Bobby Fischer, he could still win this position even if Jesus Christ and Bobby Fischer were playing black. Oh, there he goes. Now, the secret in chess is every time you make a move, you leave a square behind. Every time you move a pawn, you make a weakness. So now you see these two pawns?
Mm-hmm.
This pawn was guarding this square and this square. And this
Right.
pawn was guarding this square and this square. Now those squares aren't covered.
Right.
And now see how they're lined up like this now? Hello!
Okay.
Hello!
So now, would I?
If you go that way, I go
threaten
that
the
way.
rook?
Now he scares my rook. Go ahead, scare my rook.
Okay.
Now notice what's happened. As he scares the rook, see this square right here? That's weak now. So I'm taking this, but we're really happy to have conquered this square eternally. Now I just want to like snake a king up there. Let's see if he defends it right. The tension mounts. Maybe we could edit some sharp music into this. So like the tension mounts. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, he has scared me. This guy's like, hey, what are you doing to me? Leaving him all by himself, scared and alone. They already make fun of me for being green as it is. Calm down, dude. He's making a run for it, people. Now see this? Now this pawn has no brothers. He is the lone duck.
Yeah, I see it now.
Ah! Every time you make a move, you leave a square behind. So see this right here? This king was guarding that pawn, but then he went over there.
Oh, that wasn't smart.
Dylan's having a hard time, and he's yelling at his pieces for being stupid. All right. Now, after this move, the position is probably resolved. Right? And in an attempt to keep you guys glued, what I'm going to do now is show you the actual right way to do this exercise. Everybody clap for Dylan. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Clap louder.
I'll clap for myself.
All right. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
'Cause
Now,
I'm learning something.
now, here's what we're going to do. The pawns act like a coherent unit. They're a team, right? No man is an island. Boom. And now the rook's like, dude, I'm coming to get you. And he moves over here, and this pawn's like, bro, relax. And then he's like, I'm coming to get you. Now, if we move this pawn up to here, the rook could come over and eat the baby pawn. So we're just going to move this pawn one right here to stop the rook from coming back to that square right there and pinning that pawn. So now he's like, I'm coming to get you. Now listen, a less refined man at this point would move this pawn. But if I move this pawn like that, then this pawn right here is going to get weak. So we just slip the king in. The crowd goes crazy. And now the rook's getting frustrated. He's like, hey. It's like, dude, I saw that coming. I saw that coming. Now, the king comes to activate. Now you see, the back of the pawn chain is the weakest part of the pawn chain. So I leave the king here to protect this part of the pawn chain and come forward.
That's it.
Now my opponent, Dylan the Ruthless, as he calls himself, steps over here. I don't want to make any weaknesses, but I don't want to leave this pawn behind either, so I'm going to go up one.
Right.
Dylan the Ruthless will attack this pawn. Now if I move this pawn too, then this pawn's going to get very weak right here.
Right.
So we're only going to move this pawn one. Dylan the Ruthless attacks this pawn, and we come here. He attacks this pawn, and we come here. He attacks this pawn, and we come here. He comes back to get the backwards doodad, and the king activates.
Should I
Holding.
film some of the? Oh,
Holding the doodad. We have the lovely Miss Karu Wang has just re-entered the atmosphere as we're calling her Asian Vanna White, right?
okay, sure. I'll take it.
So now, Dylan enters with ruthless hostility. We now advance the pawn, and as you can see, this guy's a dead duck. But we've split the board. See you later, alligator.
Right. Now you can easily get over
He eats
there.
my pawn. Now listen, if this guy goes by himself, the rook's going to catch him, right?
Right.
But we're going to send him by himself,
And then I'll be able to just take it.
and now he comes here, the rook guards it, so he'll blockade, and we come here. The king comes down, but you see what happens when we push this pawn here as he tries to get to our weak pawn chain. Boom. Now there's an issue. If this king goes anywhere other than this square, if he like comes back here, this pawn could push at any time. And then after he takes that, we make our queen.
Right.
So now the
right.
rook decides it's going to be all aggressive and handsome and run over to this side of the board. But we exhibit zero fear. king up. Rook takes pawn. Check. King up. And see what's happening to this poor little guy? He's backing himself into the corner.
Right.
So
right,
now
right.
he goes after the weakest link. First we throw the king check. Now the king's in the corner. See this guy?
Yeah.
He seems like he's had better days, but watch this. Pawn here. If the king comes to this square here in the hole, we push a pawn with check. And when we push the pawn with check, the king takes and that deflects away, and then we can take the other pawn.
Right.
So so the rook has to come back. But when the rook comes back, we do the nasty trick here. Threatening checkmate on the next move.
So the goal is really just to corner the king.
Well,
pretty much.
The goal is to keep the pawns unified as an army, creating weaknesses that we can protect. So see, this would be a pawn structure weakness right here.
Right.
On that square, it would be a weakness, but our king protects it, so it's not a weakness.
Yeah.
Right? And the king we split the forces up, and the king got forced into the corner, which is one way that you could win this. But now, the rook could come back here to pin this pawn, but when the rook comes back there to pin this pawn, it's checkmate.
Right.
So the rook starts to cry a little bit. And if you notice, anywhere he moves, the very next move is checkmate. There's absolutely nowhere to move to block checkmate because this is too strong. If he tries to pin it, we're going to checkmate here. This all came from guarding all the weaknesses in the pawn structure.
So in a real game, how does this what can this lesson teach you?
This is endgames.
For endgames.
This is how endgames operate, but this is also mid-game pawn structure, and how the pawns actually work together to guard all the squares in the mid-game. So if you come down to the park and we do this exercise together, I've had people that were like rated 1,000 jump to 1,600 after doing a couple of these exercises, because once you learn how the pawns fit together, you start to know how the pieces operate too. So you see here, I know to look for these weak squares here, the square that's not guarded by a pawn, and what I did is build a position to compensate for that, and then prep to correct it, and it goes from weak to strong in one move. So it applies to the middle game and the end game.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you, Cheese. Now I know something about chess.
I learned this on an extraterrestrial spacecraft. It was imbued in my DNA before I came here to show you the alpha and the omega become one and the same. I love you, and please don't subscribe to my dad's YouTube channel. Game of Chess, step on up. It's cheaper than a gourmet coffee cup.